I'm Melina McEwen. I'm your MC today, so please bear with me because I usually don't do MCing. I'm usually sitting in the audience, so if I make a mistake, this is my first time. So first of all, I'd like to invite Uncle Mick Ecknelly to come up and do our Welcome to Country.
Thank you, Melina. Hello, everybody. My name is Mick Ecknelly, and I'm a proud Boyini man from this region. First, I would like to pay my respects to all our elders, past, present, and emerging. Now, the Boyini people have had a continuing connection to this region since time immemorial. Mount Barkham, Barney Point, Curtis Island, and many other places in the Gladstone region are important to us. The early European settlers took many photos of the Boyini people, dressed in their possum cloaks, some which remain on public record today. The Boyini people are happy people at one with the land on which they live. And I'd like to welcome you all here today, wherever you may come from. And now I'd like to do a welcome in our Boyini language. Migan, Yaya, Nanju, Alangan. My mother and father are the sun and the moon. Dal Babaram, Menaduru, Mon Bumi, our old men and old women have passed. Guru, Yeda, Yina, they are here always, sleeping. Bundan Galabinga, Janyagoa, you are here on Boyini country, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Uncle Mick. And I too would like to pay my respects to our elders as well, our past, present and emerging, and to everyone in the room here. I would like to pay my respects, and also all our Nhulundu workers as well that are paving the way and trying to make it an easy process for you to access our aged care services, which is probably a really daunting exercise for everyone. I haven't had the need for it, but I'm sure everyone will hopefully get something out of this forum today. I think everyone's got a program, and today, this morning, we're going to be crossing over to the Department of Health, the Flexible and Home Care Program team, with Rob and Megan, who are joining us via online today. So they're going to be talking about how to access, I suppose, aged care, and looking at how to access the aged care packages as well. So I'm going to get Brandon to link up with the guys now, if they're ready.
So, my name is Robert Silverman. I'm from the Commonwealth Department of Health. I work in the Brisbane Aged Care branch, managing the home care team. With me today, I've got the Queensland Home Care lead, Megan Coughlin, and also one of our other home care leads who's not quite on screen, Charlotte Gates. Charlotte's stepped away. So thank you, Uncle Mick, for your welcome to country, and thank you, Joe and Colleen, for giving us the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to start by also acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are gathered today in both Gladstone and Brisbane, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And we also apologise for not being able to present in person today. As far as that, it's a real loss for us that we can't be with you in the room. Now, we'll be showing some slides today that you'll see up on the screen. Please, if there's information on them and you haven't got your camera ready or a pen and paper, we'll pass on the presentation to Colleen, and she can share it amongst you all.
Could we get the person to dim the lights?
Yes. Quick way,
It's very blind.
Can everyone see the presentation on the screen? It says aged care at the moment. Could you put your hand up if you can see that slide? No one? Okay. Ladies are saying they can't see the slide.
Can you see it now?
We'll just try one thing to bring it up. Apologies for this.
Do we have to press share?
They have to share their screen.
Oh, okay.
Say this. Maybe it's.
Oh, here we go. Can you see that okay?
We'll
Yep.
just persevere for a minute, otherwise I'll continue talking.
Oh.
I'll keep talking anyway while Megan endeavours to get the screen up on board. So today we'll be talking about the aged care system in Australia. The presentation will cover a brief overview of different types of aged care programs funded by the Commonwealth Government. Then we'll talk about my aged care and the processes involved in that, with access and referrals. And then we'll quickly talk about the fees and costs and where to find further information. Hopefully we'll have time for questions and answers at the end, but don't fear if for some reason we run out of time. Very happy for Colleen or Joe to pass on some questions to the team later and we can reply by email or talk to someone. Can people see the presentation now?
Yes.
It says aged care. It's a slide of aged care. Thumbs up. You can see it? Great, thank you. We'll post the video. All right. So we look at the slide up there at the moment. We'll just put a bit of context to aged care in Australia. And when we talk about aged care, it's important to note that the majority of older Australians live at home without accessing any form of government aged care support. That said, as you can see by the screen, there is a lot of people that access home care and some people access residential care as well. And just by way of figures, some of the data we have for 2019 to 2020, close to 840,000 people were assisted in their homes through the Commonwealth Home Support Program, or CHSP as a lot of people know it. 142,000 people were receiving services through a home care package, and 244,000 people were in permanent residential aged care. Just on that, people often associate aged care with residential care. However, as you can see by that circle up there with the 64%, the majority of people do stay independent and remain at home receiving home care services. So we'll continue on, and the shot you can see now is the aged care services continuum, and it's just a little bit of a snapshot about the entry-level aged care, which is for people with basic needs, and we'll talk to that soon. And then as we go through the aged care journey, you can see that sometimes people need more complex needs, but that can be delivered in home care. And then we also have residential aged care where that best suits a person's circumstances. Entry to all these programs is via the My Aged Care Contact Centre, which I will talk to later. But first up, when we look at the aged care continuum, we'll talk through entry-level home support. And for most people, that starts with the Commonwealth Home Support Program, or CHSP. So you'll see up on the screen the different services that are offered under this program. And as you can see, CHSP is suitable for people who are able to manage living at home, but may need help with just a few daily tasks. And that's essentially the aim of the program, to keep people well and help them remain living happily and independently at home. So what you would see there, there's a suite of services, but you would find that with CHSP, it provides small amounts of a single service or a few different services to people on a long-term basis. And as you can see, some of the services that are included there, people may not always relate to aged care. For example, domestic help, which can be help with cleaning and laundry, personal care, such as showering or dressing. We have home maintenance and some modifications. For instance, if it's hard to change that light bulb or the gardening's getting a bit tough for you. Aids and equipment, such as bath seats and mobility aids. And then we have meals, food preparation. Most of you would be aware of organisations such as Meals on Wheels that deliver meals to people. There is some nursing involved in this program. And then there's also allied health services such as podiatry and physiotherapy. There's also social activities with the Commonwealth Support Program, because we recognise that's very important for people. And so some of these services can be provided in community settings, such as social support, like accompanying activities and group excursions, transport for appointments, for example, a doctor's appointment. And there's also respite care for people while their care is taken break. So as you can see, there's a range of different types of services under the CHSP program. And like I said, that's our entry-level service program. We'll continue moving along now with the continuum. And so now we're starting to look at when people might have more complex home care needs. And when that starts to happen, we're looking at the home care packages program, which I'm sure most of you would have heard about at some stage. So you can see on the screen the picture of the house with all the different levels of packages. And like I said, home care packages provide more complex support than CHSP. However, once again, the purpose of the program is to provide care to support people to remain at home. So you can see the 4 levels of support. Levels 1 and 2 basically support people with basic care needs or low-level care needs. Then as your needs start to become a bit more complex, you'd be looking at a level 3 package or a level 4 package that would support people with high care needs. Now, some of this can be a little bit confusing, and we often have debates even with our team about how some of the services people might receive in a level 1 or 2 home care package are quite similar to services people receive under CHSP, such as transport to social events. And the reason for this is because home care package levels 1 and 2 are not intended to provide comprehensive clinical health services. It's when a person is eligible for level 3 or 4 package that there's a greater emphasis on delivering complex care. And some of the services that you find under a home care package can include, once again, personal care such as showering and dressing. We talked about transport and personal assistance for shopping and appointments. But there's also continence management, mobility and dexterity support such as walking frames, pressure relieving mattresses. There's nursing, allied health, and under that banner you will see that people will get speech therapy, podiatry, hearing and vision services. There's management of skin integrity, such as assistance with bandages. And there's also goods and equipment support that can help people on a daily basis. Now what's important to note here with home care packages is that they're provided on what we call a consumer-directed care basis, which means the focus is on you as the client, rather than you go to a provider and the provider say, this is what we can provide, this is the services we have on board. The providers should be having meaningful discussions with you about your care needs and trying to match them within the services that they can fund. So CDC allows the care recipient and your carer more power to influence the design and delivery of the services that you receive. And with that, there's a bunch of stuff that you work with this service provider to develop, including a care plan and a budget. And with that, there has to be a lot of clarity around that so you understand the services that you're receiving and also how much you're paying for them. So that's the home care packages program in a nutshell. We'll keep moving along now, and of course, with the continuum, we now move to residential care, which is the highest level of care available for government subsidised aged care. So residential care obviously is suitable for people if they require more help that can be provided by a home care package, and due to their circumstances they can no longer live at home. What I would say about this, no doubt you would have seen a lot of media around residential care, especially with condition, and most of it is negative, unfortunately, and I would say most of it is warranted. But what I would say there, it is important to note though that the majority of the sector do deliver services that meet the regulated standards, and there are very strict standards to meet in delivering aged care. And residential care in general does provide people with the care they need. So while the majority of people do stay at home, residential care is an integral part of the aged care system and continues to develop to meet people's needs and community expectations. And when I talk about expectations, we're starting to see new different models of residential care, but there's more innovation in their approach to the design and delivering of aged care. And what I mean by that is it's moving away from the old hospital type facilities that we all equate with aged care to more modern home-like settings, which I think is a good thing. And visiting some of the aged care facilities for the last couple of years, they've come a long way from over the last couple of decades. So types of care and services that can be provided in residential settings. All Australian government funded aged care homes are required to provide a range of care and services to the residents who need them, including respite care recipients as well. The types of care and services that are provided, like I said, are strictly regulated, and there's fees as well, which are set out in the quality of care principles. And people can look that up if they're interested. And the care services that we're talking about can include obviously nursing services, allied health and therapy, exercise programs, chronic pain management, ventilators, mobility and other types of aids, and a range of equipment. So now we'll move on to a couple of programs that have short-term care options. And we'll talk first to short-term restorative care, which is in the green square. So these programs are rehabilitation and wellness programs for people over 65 years of age who've had an injury or an illness. Short-term care provides care and supports services for a set period of time. For example, these two programs run for 8 to 12 weeks. Some are provided in hospital, others at home, and of course they differ depending on the individual's needs. What is important is that they aim to help clients with their day-to-day tasks to either restore or maintain their independence. So with the short-term restorative care or STRC program, it aims to reverse or slow functional decline and improve your wellbeing and independence, and hopefully delay or rescue entering long-term care permanently or prematurely. STRC is provided for a maximum of 8 weeks and includes services again such as nursing support, allied health, personal care, home modifications, and assistive technology. And we've had some great stories of people who have been on a slow decline due to a range of conditions, and this program has helped them improve or regain their wellbeing from where they were weeks ago. A great example that I heard of was a gentleman who had a fall and he had to regain his leg strength. And it wasn't, and when you see this person's case study, it wasn't just in terms of medically supporting this person, but his main aim was to get back to all goals, which was central to his life as far as his mates goals and his main social activity. And the program helped him get to a stage where he could go back there. So not only supported him medically, but also supported him in an emotional and social sense. And some of the aged care providers have some great videos up on their websites about short-term restorative care that I encourage you to have a look at if you're interested in that program. It really steps down and clarifies how the program works. We also have transition care. So that provides goal-oriented and therapy-focused services directly after a hospital stay. So that's the difference between short-term restorative care and transition care. It includes low-intensity therapy, social work, and nursing support or personal care. Care can be provided for a maximum of 12 weeks and can be provided at home, in the community, in a residential care setting, or a mix of these. types of respite care on the slides. It's another form of short-term care that gives its clients and their breaks a break for a short period of time and allows carers the time and space to do some things independently. It can be accessed for a few hours, days or longer, once again depending on the needs of the client and their carer, and as well as their eligibility and what services are available to them. Once again, it can be delivered in a variety of services as you can see up, settings as you can see up there. We have emergency care from planned situations, and then we also have community-based care that can be overnight or weekend, and then also residential care. So under those three pillars, we pretty much cover the types of respite care that's available to people. Very quickly, and like I said, if I rattle through this a bit too quick and some of it's gone over your head or you're not sure about something, we will have a Q&A at the end, and we're happy to provide information after the session as well. But now we'll talk about how to access these aged care programs. So as I mentioned earlier, the starting point to accessing aged care support is My Aged Care, which is both a phone line and a website, which is up on the screen there. Anyone can access My Aged Care. You don't have to be receiving aged care services. It's a public phone line and a public website. So it doesn't matter if you're an aged care client or not. My Aged Care provides information on the different types of programs and services, and can help aged care clients and their families understand eligibility and help start the process to accessing these services, provide information about costs, and also help with finding an aged care provider. If you prefer to phone My Aged Care, an operator can provide you the same information as that you can find on the website. And you can also ask for this information to be printed out and have it posted to you as well. Another tip, if you do call My Aged Care, is you can also ask for a referral number. So then if you have to call back at a later date, hopefully you don't have to re-explain your situation or why you're calling. You can advise the operator of your referral number, and hopefully that will get them up to speed quickly with what your matter is. With aged care, just like everything in life, it's important to plan ahead so that when you do need aged care, the processes that are involved, they have inbuilt time frames, such as the assessments and sometimes waiting times before care can be delivered. If you plan ahead, and then you do need aged care pretty quickly, at least you're sort of ahead of the curve with those processes that are built in. And hopefully, if the crisis occurs, that you'll be set for aged care to support you. And what I would add to that is, if you're thinking that you need a bit of help at home, or you're starting to think about aged care and you're not receiving it, that's the time when you should probably give My Aged Care a call and have a chat to them. The planning that I'm talking about, it can involve discussions around a person's financial circumstances, the types of care they will be comfortable receiving, and if a representative is required to help them on the way. I'd add there that because these are important decisions, every step of this aged care journey, we encourage you to have support people at your side or consider someone in your life that could provide that support to you. Because as we all know, life moves pretty quickly, and even if we're on top of things today, if there's an emergency situation down the track and you need someone else to talk on your behalf, we'll already have someone in place. And I'll talk about the representatives process in a minute. My Aged Care also provides a number of features, and it's designed so that people with particular needs can use it. This includes assisting people with hearing and vision impairments. There's a lot of information in other languages, and there's also a translating service. And there's information on services that provide specialised care for people with different backgrounds and circumstances, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, people from non-English speaking backgrounds, veterans, and also people at risk of homelessness. So now we'll get to where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, with my aged care. And these are the steps up on the screen that the person will go through if they call my aged care. So as I said, to start the journey, most people will be contacting my aged care. Most people do this by phone. There is an online form that can be used to request an assessment as well. If you're seeking services for the first time, my aged care contact officer will ask a series of questions in order to understand your care needs, and a client record has been created. In general, initial eligibility for services is 65 years for Australian citizens and 50 years for some other groups of people, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and people at risk of homelessness. The screening call will take at least 10 minutes, sometimes it can take longer, and you'll need your Medicare card. Once again, I'd like to emphasise that if you feel that you need someone else on the call with you, you can certainly have a family member or any other support person in your life that you'd like to help guide you through the call. Following the screening process, the operator will usually refer you for an assessment, and that will determine your eligibility for the services that I mentioned, whether it's CHSP, a home care package, or residential care. This assessment's free, and it usually happens at home, and there's no cost involved. So the assessor will come out and have a chat to you and anyone else who wants to be present at the meeting, and then they'll make a decision about your care needs and what aged care services you're eligible for and what will suit you best. And then that triggers a process where you'll receive an approval letter, and then you'll have a period of time, usually 56 days, to find a provider and commence receiving aged care services. That's the maximum time frame. So if you need services in a much quicker time frame than that, by all means, you can start to look for a provider. And on that, you may have a provider in mind. A neighbour might say that provider X is great, and you should give them a go and you want to do that, and that's fine. But if you're not sure about providers, there's a lot of information on my aged care, and the operators can once again talk you through that. There's a find a provider search function where you can look at providers in the region for CHSP, home care and residential care. And they'll also have their prices and their costs up on the website, and also if they specialise in delivering services to certain groups of people. As I said, if a person feels they need support through the process, you can nominate a representative, and I certainly encourage you to think about that. There's two types of representatives that my aged care will identify. There's a regular representative, which is when a person has the ability to make informed decisions, but still want someone there for a bit of help. For instance, say I wanted aged care, and I thought I don't really know the system well, but my friend Megan here is an ace with it, so I'm going to have Megan as my representative. I would nominate her, and then she could help with the decision making and talk on my behalf. Then there's also an authorised representative, and that's in cases when a person can't make an informed decision. And we're starting to get into power of attorney territory. Another example I can offer there is my grandmother had dementia, so she couldn't make informed decisions. So one of her children had to be her authorised representative for her aged care matters. And like I said, even if you feel that you understand the system, it's probably a good idea to have a think about having a backup with a representative. So now we'll talk about some of the costs of care. And you can see under different programs up on the slide, different types of costs. So the Commonwealth, I've talked about government subsidised programs, and the government does indeed subsidise aged care costs, but when people are able to, they're expected to contribute to the cost of the services they receive. There's no real standard cost for aged care. You might see on websites, or people might say that the home care package is worth up to $52,000, or you're eligible for X amount of CHSP services that cost this much. But the services and the costs are really rely on the individual. And then it drills down to the type of care you need, the provider you choose, and your financial situation. Now, people will be told if they need a financial assessment to access these services, and if they do, that's done by Services Australia. Services Australia also offers a free financial information service, and sometimes people call that the FIS officers, and they can understand what happens to you in terms of, help you understand what happens in terms of your finances when you enter aged care, so you can make more informed decisions. Once again, this is a free service. If you're thinking of using it, I think there's a bit of a waiting list, so if you did feel like you needed that financial advice, I would call them sooner rather than later. And the number's up on their website, but just for your information, it's 132300. My Aged Care also has a fee estimator that can help you look at costs and provide an estimate of any fees and charges that you might have to contribute to on the type of care you're receiving. Now, we also have protections in place to make sure that aged care is affordable and accessible to everyone. And so with that, we have what we call a financial hardship measure, or financial hardship assistance. And that's available for people who cannot afford their aged care costs for reasons beyond their control. Once again, that assessment sits with Services Australia. So that's very important, that if you feel you need aged care that you may not be able to, you feel like you may not be able to budget for it, well, you should certainly talk to My Aged Care and Services Australia when you're accessing services. The next slide is just stepping a little bit away from the services and My Aged Care itself, and this is the Care Gateway website. As you can see, like My Aged Care, there's a contact number and also a website online. We all realise how important, how significant it is for carers across Australia and looking after people, and also what a really hard job it is and how fatiguing it is. So the Care Gateway is a national online and telephone service for people to find information, practical advice and services to support them in their caring role. Carer supports can include phone counselling, so you can have one-on-one support with a counsellor. If you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed with caring, you can connect with other carers on an online forum. There's self-guided coaching sessions online, and there's also skill courses for carers, and that can include information about caring and also other carers' insights and practical tips. So it's well worth having a look at, or having a talk to the Care Gateway operator if you feel that you need that extra support. The aged care system also has a complaint system in place. We like to think, as I said, that most of the sector delivers aged care fairly smoothly, but of course no system is perfect. If you have any concerns about the aged care you're receiving, or indeed a complaint, I would advise that hopefully you have a good relationship with your aged care provider and you would have the confidence to talk to them about the services and clarify what you feel not be going right. But if not, if you feel like you're best talking to someone else, we have an independent aged care quality and safety commission, which is up on the screen. This is the point of contact for aged care consumers to raise concerns and ask questions about the services they receive. There's strict confidentiality around these calls, and if you wish to, you'll call and the complaint remain anonymous to ensure that you've got the confidence and the confidentiality to speak freely about the issue at hand. We also have consumer advocacy services in place. We have the Age and Disability Advocacy Australia, or ADA Australia. They usually have offices in most regions across Queensland. and they provide support to senior Australians and people with disability. They certainly know their stuff about aged care, but they can also talk to you about other matters that are broader or beyond aged care, legal matters, guardianship, things like that you may need some support or clarification on. And of course, we have My Aged Care itself, where you can contact and talk about the services you receive if you feel something's not right, or indeed if you want to query or make a complaint about My Aged Care yourself, you can call them and talk to them. Once again, I would recommend that if you do call My Aged Care about a complaint, that you get a referral number for that call. So that's a run through of the programs in My Aged Care. Do we have any, does anyone have any questions about information on talking to? And bear in mind, if you feel you'd rather talk directly to Colleen or Joe later, and pass on some questions privately, very happy to do that as well. Yeah. And another thing too, I'm not sure if anyone's talking, we can't, it seems a bit muffled, so I'm not sure if I can hear you properly.
Can you hear me?
And you may need to type any questions that we have.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions for Rob and Megan at all that we can type in?
Yes, I don't think we've got sound, so we'll probably, if it's okay with everyone, we'll sign off. Once again, thank you very much for your time today and the opportunity to talk. We really appreciate it, and hope you have a great day. It looks like a great program you've got there for the morning, and we're quite envious that you can't be there. But have a lovely day, and thank you all.
Thank you. If you do have any questions, thank you. If you do have any questions, we can write them down and forward them on, or Joe and Susanna can maybe be able to assist as well. Rob's presentation will be available via our website, the Nhulundu website, this afternoon. By the end, not this afternoon, by the end of the week. So if you have check out the Nhulundu website at nhulundu.com.au, you'll be able to access Rob's PowerPoint presentation. Before I introduce our next guest speaker, I would just like to let everyone know that Lenore Young, who is our aged care assessor, is here at the forum today, and she's also available for questions and answers at the end of the forum. So Lenore, if you'd be able to wave your hand. So Lenore's there, so if you have any questions that Lenore will be able to assist you with at the end of the forum. Okay. So our next guest speaker is Kylie Devney from VAJ Burns & Co. Lawyers, and Kylie will be talking about the importance of health directives and the importance of power of attorney and wills. So I'll hand it over to Kylie.
Thank you very much. Pretty informal presentation from me today, really just here to have a chat and see if there's any questions around the documents. A little bit about myself. My name is Kylie Devney.
You're right. Do you need a hand to go out?
For about 12 years
Do you need a
now.
hand to go
And
out?
I was born and raised in Gladstone.
You're right.
So, a local. VAJ Burn has been around since 1931, so a very long-term local business. We have a Gladstone office, a Bundaberg office. But importantly for these sorts of matters, we can also do visits to hospital, retirement.
I'm fine, thank you.
Visits, if there's any need for
I wanted to talk to somebody about having a consultation about getting some
Alright, so
help.
there's three main documents that we recommend.
You'll be able to write your name on here and your phone number, and
The
I'll
first
pass it
one
on.
is the enduring power of attorney. So, what's an enduring power of attorney? Hopefully a lot of you already know that answer. and have in fact got this document in place, because it's a very important one. So it's a document that gives legal power to your loved ones to make decisions when you're not able to, or sometimes simply if you want them to assist you. We're seeing it more and more as time goes on that the legal authority is needed. You used to be able to get by a lot easier with financial institutions, government departments, just by being a spouse, husband, wife, next of kin per se. But these days we're seeing more and more that we are needing
I live
the
next
legal
door to
document.
Yvonne.
And I
She
think
has
that'll
home
happen
care.
only more so.
So I don't know if you know.
Now, in the enduring power of attorney, there's two
I'll get someone to give you a call.
that you're giving personal and health power. So these are the people that, if you lose capacity, that you can no longer make your own medical decisions. This is the person with the legal authority to make your medical decisions for you. That will also apply to your care needs. Okay, so speaking to the doctors and the care facilities to make those decisions. The other side of the document is financial. So these people have the power to make financial decisions on your behalf and manage your financial affairs.
Thank you.
Now, it's a very strong document. Your enduring power of attorney, while they're acting, they can put their signature on a page, and it's as good as if you put your own signature on a page. They can sell your house, spend all the money in your bank accounts. Now, of course, they've got to act in your best interest, so they should only be doing those things if it's required, but certainly they have a lot of power when they make those decisions. So I guess that's the first tip, is to make sure that when you get this document in place, that you really trust the people you're appointing. Now, personal only starts when we lose capacity, but financial powers can start earlier. We find that lots of people like to set it that it is only at lack of capacity. Only once a doctor signs off that I can no longer manage my financial affairs can anybody step in. But we also see a lot of people like to select immediately. So from the day they sign the document, it can be used by their attorneys. The main reasons people do it this way is physical distance. So if you're off travelling or caravanning or in a remote location, wherever that is, you might need someone back home to be signing documents or doing things on your behalf. The other one is physical incapacity. Sometimes people get to the point where it's very difficult for them to physically get into banks or institutions to sign documents, or they just start wanting their children or loved ones to start to take over and help them out, but it all gets a little bit overwhelming, as a lot of the government processes these days are getting a little bit intense with the forms. So a lot of the time people want them to help step in. And the other reason with physical incapacity might even just be loss of use of hand. You're not able to sign that document anymore, so your attorney could do that for you. Now, who do we appoint? They must be over 18. They can't be a paid carer. Now, they can get the government care pension. They just won't be paid by you on top of that. And they can't be bankrupt if they're going to manage your financial affairs. But other than that, it really just comes down to someone who you trust, who you think will make the decisions you would have made if you had capacity, and someone who you trust that could act in your best interest. They'll have your best interest at heart and do the right thing. You can cancel the document at any time, but you must have capacity to do that. Once we've lost our capacity, we can't go back and change those documents. So we need to make sure that whenever we do them throughout our life, we hope they're going to be protective and last as long as possible. Another main trigger for our documents is separation, divorce, new relationships and marriage. Sometimes people have an enduring power of attorney in place appointing their husband or wife. They then separate and divorce. They actually still want that person to make those decisions, but a divorce cancels the document. So a lot of people don't realise that a marriage or a divorce cancels it automatically, so you have to then go do new documents on those times. Now you can appoint numerous people. We recommend you always appoint at least 2, as long as there's 2 people in the world you trust. And you can have, in fact, up to 4 people acting jointly under your enduring power of attorney. When you appoint more than one person, you then dictate how you want them to make those decisions. So, let's say, for example, we were appointing 3 people. We could appoint them jointly, that is, all 3 have to agree and sign off before decisions get made. Some people worry logistically it might be hard for the 3 of them to get together and manage things, but I guess it's the ultimate protection to have it in place that they all have to agree. No one can go rogue and do something that the others aren't happy with. You can also appoint severally, that is, any individual that you have appointed can act without the other. So it's just one person and they've got the authority and it doesn't matter which one. Obviously with that one it's a higher level of trust, because if one of the attorneys goes and does things the other attorneys don't agree with, that can cause some conflict. You can also choose a majority. Some people, if they've got, say, three attorneys, say, well, any 2 out of the 3, as long as 2 agree, the decision is made. And the other option is a priority, which we see frequently. Lots of people in their document appoint, say, a husband or wife or partner, and then they'll say, and if not that person, our 2 children. So you might say, my husband first, and only if he cannot act does it go down to the children, and then they must make their decisions jointly, for example. So you can build that protection into your document on drafting. What if your attorneys do the wrong thing? Look, it does happen. There's obviously elder abuse and things like that going on. The only thing really that can happen is that someone needs to make an application to QCAT to have them removed. So you make essentially a court application to say that someone's misused their position or misused the funds. They would be removed, and then QCAT would appoint somebody else to step in and make the decisions moving forward. If there's nobody to make decisions, as in terms of a cared or loved one, the government does have the government guardian who can step in and make those decisions on your behalf as well. One of the main problems we see with enduring powers of attorney, it is a government form. So even when you go see a solicitor, we're all using the same form off the government website. Some people try to download the form and just do it themselves, and get it witnessed by maybe a JP. If you do the document well, that works fine. But we get it from time to time where people have tried to do the document themselves but haven't quite understood how to fill out the form, or the witness hasn't signed it correctly, things like that. And if, for example, a child comes to see me with mum's enduring power of attorney, mum's lost capacity, here's the enduring power of attorney, and if I then examine the document and that person, it's not valid and they've lost capacity, they in fact have no enduring power of attorney in place. Which leads me to my last point with enduring powers of attorney. What happens when we don't have them? So if we don't have an enduring power of attorney in place, and that legal power to make decision is required, the only way to get that is to make essentially an application to QCAT. I call it a court application. It's the Queensland Civil Administrative Tribunal, so it's quasi-court, but it does still take a lot of time and money. And you make that application to QCAT to then have a judicial member appoint you, the attorney, for that individual. So it's obviously a lot easier to do the document, have it in place, especially with even some contingencies in place. This person, if not that person, that person. You might do that document once, put it away, and it could last your whole lifetime. If you don't have it in place, it's very possible that your family will need to spend potentially thousands of dollars and take some months to get the legal authority to be able to make decisions on your behalf or deal with your affairs. Again, some people get by with, oh, I already gave authority at the bank and they're willing to deal with this person. Sometimes that only works at that top level. They might be willing to deal with a husband or wife, but if something happens to both of you, will they deal with the children or whoever the next care will be? Not always. but also it always escalates. So if there is real estate to be dealt with, you cannot deal in real estate without that enduring power of attorney registered with the government. And if you don't have that, then you absolutely have to go off to QCAT to get that order in place. Document is the Advanced Health Directive. Hopefully you've heard about that one, but it's not as common and it's a little bit more optional in my view. Basically it's a document you do with your doctor as well as a solicitor, or if not a solicitor it would have to be a justice of the peace or something similar. In that document you're giving, the secret's in the title, you're giving your health directions in advance. So it basically just deals with end of life decisions. If I was in a permanent vegetative state, would I want prolonged life support or not? And within the document, there's actually a breakdown and sort of some yes and no areas where you're saying, you know, maybe yes, I want antibiotics, but no, I don't want cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You can indicate you want all treatment, you can indicate you want no treatment. Now you need to do that appointment with a doctor so that a doctor can make sure that you understand all of those medical things that you're giving directions on. And then the lawyer or justice of the peace signs off on the capacity and the understanding of the legal effect of the document. Now, why do people do these documents? Three main reasons. One is that we're finding that nursing homes, care facilities and all those sorts of residential care facilities, they're starting to request and sometimes even require them. So that's one thing. Another reason is that you might have strong views and you want to make sure those views are followed. You want to make sure that you want to happen to you is what happens to you. So you make that decision now. The third reason, and probably the reason we see the most, is some people would like to try and take that decision making off their loved ones. The reality is that when loved ones have to make those decisions, it's normally a pretty emotional time and they can find it really, really difficult. If you don't have that if you don't have the Advanced Health Directive in place, it then falls back to your attorneys in your enduring power of attorney. They'll be the ones making those health decisions. I remember a case where we had 3 children appointed jointly, and one of the children just couldn't emotionally deal with the role, and basically it meant nothing happened. No decision could be made for the doctors, and they just had to sort of keep going and going. And she even said to me, I know what Dad wanted, but I just can't do it. So sometimes that's the beauty of doing that Advanced Health Directive, especially if you've done that role, you'll understand how difficult it can be, but you can take that decision making off loved ones. Conversely, some people think the opposite and think, no, my loved ones would want to be in charge of making those decisions. And that's valid as well. So that's why I see it as a bit more of an optional document. I think it comes down to how strong your personal views are, or whether you think your loved ones would want to make those decisions or you'd like to make those decisions for them. And like I said, if you don't have the Advanced Health Directive, they go to your attorneys and your attorneys will make those decisions. If there's no enduring power of attorney either, then we're back in the position where will they accept a next of kin? If there's any conflict, I can tell you right now, they'll shut down and do nothing. Liability is starting to get into the way of common sense in a lot of these circumstances. But also, if that was truly needed, that legal authority, you're going back to QCAT to get appointed as the attorney. All right, the third document, and the one that everyone should be familiar with, is the will. And a will's pretty simple. Everyone sort of knows what it is. It's who's in charge when I pass away, and who gets my stuff, basically. The first thing you do in a will is you appoint an executor. So that's the person who's going to be in charge of administering the estate. They call in the assets, pay out the debts, they follow the terms of your will. And again, you can appoint numerous people in that role, or you could say, my husband or wife first, but if not, then it would be the children. You can build in those contingencies. There's lots of things you can include in a will, and in fact, I couldn't even try to list them all. You see some very interesting things, in fact. But some of the main things, of course, are the executor, who gets what. There might be some debts. So some loans you've done in your lifetime that you would like forgiven, guardianship if there's minors, what age you'd like minors to receive benefits, organ donation, cremation, burial, even song at a funeral. There's lots of things that can make it into a will depending on your wishes. When we need to review our will, this is very important. Lots of people have done one, but it might have then sat there for 30 years or who knows how long, and they haven't reviewed it. Sometimes that's fine. A good will and no change of circumstances can last forever. But change of circumstances does trigger the need for us to review our will. So again, those four: ending a relationship, starting a relationship, marriage and divorce. Marriage and divorce in particular automatically cancel the bequests to those people. So you then must do a review of your document and redo it. I've had plenty of people over the years who, oh no, we're separated, we've separated all of our property, that's not an issue. But I can tell you right now it is still an issue. They can still benefit, they can still challenge, all those sorts of things. Now, another reason you might need to change your document is not just a change of your circumstances, but the circumstances of the people you're appointing. So if you've put someone in charge and then they become bankrupt, you might want to write them out for at least the period of the bankruptcy, and same if you've made them one of your beneficiaries. You might want it that while they're bankrupt, they're going to benefit from your estate and it all disappears. Sometimes people will write them out and then write them back in, or those sorts of things. Another reason might be a death or a falling out with someone that you've previously named, or a change of your individual finances. If someone's starting a business with somebody else, setting up a self-managed super fund, companies, trusts, any property with any other person, you normally need to do a review of your document to make sure those assets are still all going to go the way you want them to go. How do you revoke a will? You automatically revoke your old will by doing a new one, but essentially destroying the old will also revokes it. So that's happened. If people just rip up the will, well, it's revoked. But if you don't do a new one, you then die without a will. Who can challenge a will? That's always an interesting one. It's not as widespread as people think. The only people who can challenge your will are a spouse, child, or other financial dependent. And the other financial dependent can only be a certain category. It has to be a parent or a minor child. So it can't be nieces, nephews, sisters, anything like that. It can only be a very specific class of person. But after they are in that, if they're in that category and they can challenge, the second thing they really need to be able to establish is need. So, for example, if I have someone come in and they say, look, I've got 3 children, but I want to leave little Johnny out. Johnny's a drug addict. I've spent lots of money on his rehab and his legal fees. He's already stolen off the other kids, and if I give it to him, it's all gone anyway. I want to leave it to the other 2. That's fine. I can do the will, only leaving it to the 2. But if Johnny decides to challenge, 1, he's a child, he's in the front door, and 2, he's going to have a financial need. So the reality is that he will likely be very successful in a claim against the estate. So all I can really say about challenge is you normally know if there's a chance of challenge. You normally know that there's someone you're leaving out or someone that's not going to be happy or those sorts of things. If there's that sort of dynamic, get some specific advice, because there are lots of things we can do during your lifetime to protect those things. We can't always fix it in the will, but we can do some other things to make sure that it doesn't happen down the track. What if I don't have a will? A lot more people die intestate than certainly they should. Either they've never done a will, or they've done a will but it's no longer legally valid or revoked. Now, if you pass away without a will, it's just set out in the legislation how your assets will flow. For some people, it works fine under the legislation, but for other people it doesn't. And ordinarily, you just like to make sure that it's going to go the way you want it to go, not wait and see. To give you a few examples, under the intestacy legislation, your first 150,000 goes to the spouse, and then the leftover goes between children, depending on a few categories. But I've got a file at the moment actually where a somewhat young man passed away without a will. The first 150 goes to his wife, but the rest of it then has to be held on trust between the children until they're 18. For some people that's fine. For her, that's not enough to buy them a house to now live in. She didn't have any assets in her name, so she's got some funds to raise the children with, but the rest of the funds are isolated for the children until they're older. And that's really difficult for her at the moment. I'm not sure if that's what he would have wanted or not. I suppose we'll never know. Another one I've got at the moment, which is another good example. I had a man pass away who didn't have any spouse or children, but he lived with his brother, and his brother was disabled from birth, and he was his guardian and full-time carer. His brother was entirely dependent on him. He did his enduring power of attorney, but he didn't do his will, and he had told his third brother, his other brother, if something happens to me, make sure all my assets go to looking after our disabled brother. And it seems so logical that that's how it should go. But he's now passed away unexpectedly without a will. His brother stepped in saying, let's make sure it all is going to go to care for our disabled brother who needs to be looked after. But the reality is under the rules of intestacy, it's actually going to go to their father. And their father they have been estranged from for about 40 years. So I bet he really wishes that he did his will. We're trying a few things in that one. Hopefully it's going to turn out okay, but if he'd just done that little will that said, I want everything to go to my brother, we wouldn't be spending a lot of legal time and effort, and we don't even know if we'll be successful. But they're the small things where sometimes it seems logical or it seems like common sense as to how it should go. But if you don't have those documents in place and it reverts to legislation, it doesn't always go that way. Okay, now when we talk about wills, we always then talk about superannuation and life insurance. For a lot of people these days, that can be the largest asset in your estate. A lot of people think by doing their will that that's enough. But superannuation does not come into your will. It doesn't form part of your estate. So when I do your will, it's dealing with, a house or a car or a bank account, the personal assets in your name. But your superannuation is entirely different and it doesn't come into the will. So, you need to make sure that you're doing what's called a binding nomination with your superannuation fund as to where you want your superannuation to go. You can imagine we've seen plenty of cases where the will says one thing, but if the superannuation fund decides something else, the entire estate almost can go in the wrong direction. Now, there's another little trick with binding nominations. When you first sign up for your life insurance policies and your superannuation, you fill out that form and it says, who do you want it to go to? You might put 100% to my wife. And online, if you log into the online thing, it will say to who's your beneficiary, and you can update and you can change your beneficiary 100% to somebody else. But that's called a non-binding nomination. The super fund ignores that entirely. It's not even relevant. I don't know why it exists. The only thing it does is make people think they've dealt with it when they haven't. A binding nomination is a very formal process. They normally have to send you a form. You need to print it, fill it out perfectly. If you get it wrong, then it's not valid. And it normally needs to be witnessed by 2 independent witnesses and posted back to them hard copy.
Every 3 years.
And that's my next point, thank you. And you need to do it at least every 3 years to keep it current. So it's something you need to actively manage. Now, when you're doing your binding nomination, you can only leave your super to a spouse, child, or other dependent. You can't leave it to nieces, nephews, sisters, brothers, nothing like that. It's not valid. Again, a lot of people think they've done their binding nomination form, and the super fund might even write back to you to tell you that's not valid. We'll only find out after someone passes away. If you don't have, or you don't want to appoint a spouse or a child or a dependent, and you do want to appoint a niece, a nephew, a sister, whoever it is, usually our recommendation then is actually to force the superannuation into your estate. So you can appoint your legal personal representative on your binding nomination with your super fund, and then the super fund is actually bound to pay the super into your estate, and then it follows the terms of your will.
How do you do that?
It's the way you fill the form out. So on the binding nomination form, where it's 100%, you're writing the words legal personal representative, and that's what brings it in. Now, what happens if I don't have a binding nomination on my superannuation? The answer is that the super fund trustees decide. Now, they don't do anything silly like give it to their own family, but we still see some strange decisions from superannuation trustees. A few funny examples. I had one a few years ago where he passed away and he had a will, and his will said everything to my wife, if not my wife, our son. Everything seemed so simple. But he didn't do a binding nomination form to his wife. After he passed away, his mistress came out of the woodwork, and the super fund actually decided to split the money from the superannuation between the wife and the mistress.
Oh, that's wrong.
I agree with you. Well, then it's only going to go through her will, so that still doesn't fix our problem. But these are some of the reasons we don't like to leave it up to the super fund trustees, because if there's an estranged child, if there's a mistress, if there's who knows. Sometimes it's even things like, I have another one at the moment where, so a man's passed away quite suddenly in his early 50s. He had a girlfriend who had been living with him. He was in a relationship with her for about 3 years. And she was living with him, but they didn't have any joint bank, it was semi-serious, but no joint bank accounts. She was still paying rent to sort of live in the house, all those sorts of things. He's obviously passed away with no binding nomination. He didn't have much else in his estate. His will said everything to my 3 children, but there's nothing really there. When the superannuation, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, those trustees have made the decision to pay it 100% to his spouse.
His spouse is ex-wife.
No, he was in a relationship with her.
3 years.
The 3 years.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. So his children get no inheritance whatsoever. Maybe he would have been okay with that. Maybe that was his intention. We'll never know. But he probably would have liked his children to at least share in that amount, I would have thought. So that's the other kicker with our superannuation is it's usually a big asset, especially if there's a death benefit payout. And if we don't control where that goes, sometimes it's practically pointless doing a will if there's not much there, if we haven't already dealt with the binding nomination at the same time. There's lots of traps. I'm making it sound so scary. The good news is that if you sit down and do these documents and get them right, they really are a set and forget. You put them together, you put them on the shelf, and then they're done. You know that they're taken care of, you know that things are going to go the way you want them to go. If you've got a complicated setup, you might need to involve an accountant or a financial advisor. If you're in pension phase in your super, you need to get some specific financial advice about that. You might want the pension phase to be cancelled and paid out. If there's self-managed super fund, family trusts, companies, any entities like that, you definitely need specific advice to make sure that those things are all going to be covered. Because again, none of those entities I've just listed are dealt with by doing your will. Your will only deals with your personal assets in your personal name. To give another example, sometimes the way you arrange your assets can have a significant effect too. I had a client who did his will, and he said in his will, even though I've just gotten married, and it was a second marriage quite late in life, he said, even though I've just gotten married, I really want all of my assets to go to my 3 children. and he passed away. His son came in and sat in front of me with the will and said, "No, Dad's left everything to us." Great. All right, let's go through what Dad had. Dad had a joint bank account with his new wife. Well, she inherits that automatically. It doesn't come into the will. They had a joint caravan. See where I'm going? They had a joint car. They had all of their assets held jointly. So she automatically inherited those, and the only thing that came into his will to go to his children was his tinny. His tinny, his little boat, it's worth about $3,000. Split between 3 children. There's a happy ending to that one though. She didn't have any children of her own, and she came in and did a will a few weeks later, leaving everything when she passes to his children. So I can't tell them that right now, but it'll play out okay. But it's just another example that his wishes on paper seemed to be that he wanted all of those things to go to his kids, and maybe he thought that his half of those things would. But if you hold things jointly, they automatically go to the other person.
Whether she wants it or not.
Whether she wants it or not. Now, she could have got it and then chosen to give it away, gift it, but that could have other ramifications for her as well. All right, a few other parting tips before I get to questions. But if I've done it well, there shouldn't be too many questions, right? Now, a tip is to make sure that your executors, whoever you say is in charge when you pass away, it's really helpful if they have a bit of an idea of the assets and liabilities you have, or at least how to find that information. Some people come into my office, they've been appointed an executor, someone's passed away. The first question I say is, what is there? What are we dealing with? And sometimes they have no idea. They're searching through drawers and cupboards and looking for paperwork, and sometimes it's 6 months later they find a bank account that they didn't even know about. So if there's a way for you to let them know generically what your affairs are, and even if that just means my bank accounts are with so-and-so, my superannuation is with so-and-so, just so they know where to go. Okay? Funeral insurance. I'm going to admit it's a little bugbear of mine. People in the marketing, it tells you that if you pass away, your funeral costs are going to be a huge issue for your family. It's generic, it's mainly not true. When you pass away, your accounts are frozen. Yes, that's true. No one can deal with your assets for at least 30 days and then usually a lot longer than that. So people worry that the cost of the funeral is going to be borne by their family immediately. The reality is that your accounts are frozen except for the funeral. The funeral invoice can go straight to the bank and the bank pays it directly. So it's just a note that we don't have to panic about the funeral cost immediately. It's usually there's enough funds in your bank account to cover that, so it's dealt with straight away.
What if it's not?
What's that, sorry?
What if there's not enough?
What if there's not enough funds? Then they could have to cover that. Yeah. But usually there's enough funds, but if there's not,
I wouldn't agree with that.
there'd be certainly some where there's not, but a lot of the time those people...
Some people might make sure there's not enough.
Very true, very true. But a lot of the time,
I know I'm going to go shortly.
make sure there's nothing. Yeah, but if you know you're going to go, pull out your super, by the way. It's a lot better when it comes into... I'll tell you why, that's a good one. If you know you're passing away, if anyone gets a terminal illness, we normally say, quickly pull all your super out and bring it into your accounts. If your superannuation goes to a spouse, it's tax-free. But if it goes as superannuation to adult children, it's taxed. If you pull your super out and it's cash, it then goes to the children tax-free. Another little tip. We find that if people are going to pass away and not have enough funds to cover their funeral in their account, then they usually would have been struggling to fund funeral insurance in any event. I've just seen people where sometimes they're literally struggling to eat, finding money for these funeral insurance policies, where you just wonder if they really need to. Another one is separated but not divorced. I've seen many of those. When you are separated but not divorced, that person is still included legally and financially in your estate. They can still challenge as a spouse, even though you're separated. And their children are still counted as your stepchildren, legally. So they can still challenge and they can still benefit from your superannuation if the trustees are making decisions.
Does that expire if you was, say, it happened 30 years ago? See you later.
Not until you get divorced. You have to do the form of divorce. That's what's said as a marriage, and that's what's said as your obligation to the stepchildren.
What if you're never married and you're just living together for 5 years?
Then as long as you've been separated for more than 2 years, then those things naturally expire. It just doesn't expire with marriage. Okay? So an end of a de facto relationship, that's fine, but still make sure you do a new will. But the end of a marriage, you must do the divorce, otherwise they can still make claims.
What if you live together for 5 years and you break up? How long then before?
There's not necessarily a set time frame. It comes down to being able to prove separation, and it comes down to being able to prove that you're no longer financially interdependent. So it's not as clear in de facto. When you're divorced, it's clear. There we are. The other thing we see in de facto, we've got one of those at the moment, is they've been separated for 2 years, living separately. But of course, she's now coming out of the woodwork saying, no, we weren't, we were still together. We met up last month for a night of passion. Here's some text messages to prove it, and now I'm going to challenge the estate. I don't know how you feel that one, I guess, except cutting ties cleanly. I don't see that yet. Now, it's a reasonably simple process to get these documents in place. If you do it with a solicitor's office, and almost every solicitor office would have a set fee available for these things, so you can call up and find out exactly what it's going to cost you per document. But it's usually one appointment with a solicitor to run through and give instructions for those documents. If you're doing an advanced health directive, you'll then want to go see your doctor as well, and then you normally come back for a signing appointment with your solicitor. You can normally sign all three at the same time.
So, around about figure.
My firm is $550 for one person to do all three documents. And they're very important documents. And we make sure we keep that affordable for that exact reason. It's more important that people have those documents in place. Now, and it applies to everybody, not just, well, we're here for an aged care session today, but everyone over 18 needs these documents in place. None of us know what's going to happen or when. So you should be making sure that kids, grandkids, friends, anybody, everyone needs to have these things in place. All my horror stories, and I've got a lot more of them, come from people who just didn't have the documents in place. If they'd spent the $300 putting a will in place, everything would be fine. But instead, their family members are spending thousands of dollars at the other end to try and rectify. If you need to go get letters of administration because there was no will, it usually costs about $4 grand. So to get the will up front for $300 and do it right once saves a lot of heartache, months of time, and thousands of dollars down the side.
The 3 documents you're talking about at the time is exactly the will.
Enduring power of attorney and the advanced health directive.
And can I ask a quick question about power of attorney?
Of course.
I've got 3 power of attorney in my will many years ago, but 2 always have to make a decision on any health or finance. If one of them passes away, what happens when does it go to the government to sort it out?
It would still just go to the 2. So if you've got 3 people named and you say any 2 out of the 3, one of them passes away, the other 2 have to make a decision together. It just reverts to a joint situation. Yeah, that's right. So if you have a document you're only appointing one person and then something happens to them, then yeah, you essentially have no document, you're running off to the government again to try and solve your problems. If, however, you build contingencies into your documents, this person. If not this person, that person. We build in those cascading options, and then you can put it away, and even if someone passes away, you don't necessarily need to update your document. It will just flow down to the next level of category. That's the way we recommend it, is that you build in contingencies. If not. Do it well, do it once. That should be the way you're able to do it. Unless, of course, you're getting married and divorced frequently, then you'll need to do it. we get those clients as well. I've got a few hands going up. Yes?
I just wonder, my superannuation was converted to an annuity, and I get paid, and if I was to pass away, there's still a whole lot of capital there. Is that still considered a super, or is that considered an asset?
Super. So it's still super, and you would need to do a binding nomination if you wanted to direct where what you want to go. But with pension and annuities, we're very careful and we always get some advice. When you have a binding nomination on those things, it then triggers payout. So if you pass away and you've got that in place, it then has to be paid out for your spouse or whoever you've nominated. If, however, you don't have a binding nomination in that circumstance and they survive you, they might prefer to keep it as a pension or an annuity. A lot of the time it's...
Well, I don't have a partner, so it goes to the children.
Well, in that case, then you would do a binding nomination.
Yeah, and I've done that, and then they have to pay tax on that.
They do, unfortunately. And there's not much we can do to avoid tax on superannuation, to be honest. Whether it comes into the estate and then goes to them, or whether it goes direct to them, tax is still payable. The only way is if it's converted to cash before you go, or if you have, I had one, for example, where there was a big chunk of superannuation and a large capital estate as well. We brought the super into the estate, and then we made sure that the super all went to the spouse because that was then tax-free. Everything else went to the children tax-free. If the super had gone thirds, and then the rest of the estate had gone thirds, they would have paid tax.
Can you explain so that again?
So if just the part about the tax in the estate.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's taxable for the adult children if it's still superannuation. Some people think if you pay the superannuation into the estate and then it gets to the kids, does that make it tax-free? No, because it's still superannuation. But sometimes when it comes into the estate, for example, I had an estate where there was super and cash, and the will said my husband and my 2 children all equally. Well, we could divvy it up. We could say, oh, well, the super is taking all that money that's super, they're taking all the money that's cash, so it was tax-free for everyone. If the super had been a binding nomination to all 3 of them, they would have been paying tax on 2/3. Simple, right?
Does life insurance, you was going to say about
Life insurance is the same as superannuation. So you've got to have your binding nomination and all those sorts of things. It falls under the same category.
So the best thing is with the super, if you know you're heading out,
Cash
Cash
out.
out, and you stick it in the goes.
Yeah, if it's going to go to adult children, absolutely.
You've got 4 kids, split it, put cash her out, split it 4 ways.
Or cash out and just have it in your name. You don't have to give it away. Yeah, you can still just have it in the bank, you don't have to give it away yet. But as long as it's cash, it'll be tax-free. It's just if it's still super. And it's really hard. I have people come and sit in front of me and they want to try and plan their estate to be tax effective for their children. But unless we know the date we're going to die, I can't do the calculations and get it right.
Right, if that one of those child is fully dependent on you, aren't they not taxable? If they're fully dependent on you,
Only
it's only
if-
ones that are not dependent.
That's right. Really, it comes down to under 18. So if they're under 18, it's tax-free, but if they're over 18, it's normally taxed.
Go on to if we have 20,000 Telstra shares.
Ooh. Are we talking capital gains? Yeah. Okay, I think that's a tough one, and I'm not allowed to give financial or accounting advice.
Say in your name.
But, so if I have, I've actually got one of these on my books at the moment too. He bought CBA shares back when they were about $1, and they're now worth about 100. Now, in his will, if it says, I leave my CBA shares to John, if John accepts those and they're transferred to him as shares, then it's not a capital gains tax event, and the capital gains point is still back when he bought them. So this person now inherits the asset, but also a big capital gain tax issue in the future. So what we usually recommend, after speaking to financial advisors and accountants, is even if you still wanted CDHF, sell the shares and buy them back the same day, then you've set your cost base that day as an option. But yeah, if you inherit it, you're then still inheriting the old cost base.
What if, like we said about the super, what if before you
Cash out,
you transfer to that number one sum there?
Yeah.
Because and
Seems too complicated for me.
what are you charging? Zero.
It doesn't change the capital.
It is.
Bit more
So
super.
that
Yeah.
10 years down the track, even pay,
Yeah, that's right.
even though I think that I've actually given to them.
Yeah. So it's got to trigger a capital gain tax event to reset the cost base.
Those
Amount of
shares,
time
10 years
later.
later, it's still equal to be then paid.
Capital gains tax. That's exactly right. Yeah, I've got one at the moment where it's literally $1 million worth of shares.
They're in the will, it would be the same.
It's the same.
They would be taxed out.
No, the capital gains tax will be. No, yeah. So if you sell them in the estate, if you sell them in the estate pays the money and you just get the money. So normally if you're inheriting shares, we say quickly get advice from an accountant because you might want to inherit them, you might want to sell them.
So that'd be up to that person.
That's right, the person receiving.
Because thousands of people are shares.
Absolutely.
Might only be 100.
That's right. And not many people sell them because of the capital gain, so it's then up to the beneficiaries. Do they sell it in the estate and copy the capital gain in the estate? Or if they keep the shares, they're going to have a capital gain down the track. Another question? Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of that session. I actually got a lot out of that session as well. So our next guest speaker is Susanna. She's going to talk about our services at Nhulundu Health Service. So I'm going to hand it over to Susanna.
Well, good morning, everybody. Now, I know that we are pushing our time limit a little bit, so I will be brief, but I'm always available for questions afterwards, and we do have a lot of our brochures and information packs that do explain a lot of our services as well. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Susanna Williams, and I'm the coordinator here in Nhulundu Aged Care. So a little bit about our services, and as Rob mentioned earlier from the department, when it gets to the stage of finding a provider, that is what we are. So we are aged care providers in the community. So a little bit about us is we've been successfully delivering services to the aged care community for over 16 years. And currently we have about 240 clients that we service. In order to do this, we have about 17 support workers, male and female. We actually have one aged care nurse who is based in Rockhampton, but sometimes does come down to Gladstone. We have one officer who works with assistance with care and housing to help people that are at risk of homelessness. We have a brand new administration officer in aged care as well, and then there's myself and Tanya, who is our aged care manager. So we've got about 23 or 24 on our aged care team. Now obviously with the growing client base, our staff base has to grow as well, so we are recruiting at the moment as well. So just to cover very briefly about some of the things that we do. Rob mentioned earlier about those different stages of the funding. The base level, which is your community home support program. Now under the community home support program, we don't offer all of the services, but we offer a majority of them. So what I will do is explain to you the ones that we do offer. So under our community home support program, we do offer things such as transport to activities or appointments and things like that. This can be through the use of taxi vouchers or directly with a support worker if you are needing that assistance. We do domestic help, so general house cleaning and those types of things like laundering your clothes and helping with linen and things like that. Personal care, if you're at the stage of needing some assistance with personal care and hygiene and things like that, that's something that our support workers do offer under that funding. And then we do go into the things like home maintenance, help with gardening and yard maintenance and things like that. Now you will see in your, if you do have a booklet on CHSP, which is our Community Home Support Program, there are meal preparation and things like that that some services do offer. Now we do offer our services in home to help prepare food. So that's something a support worker can help with as well. And then there's things that we do refer out, so allied health, for things such as podiatry, physiotherapy and occupational therapy. And then it always seems to be on the bottom of our list, or on the bottom of all the lists, but sometimes I think may be most important is the social side of things. So we understand that as we get older, the social aspect is really important as well. So we do things like accompanied activities, help with your shopping, group excursions, and we run a social group too, 2 days a week. So those are the types of things that we can actually help you under that Community Home Support Program funding. Now I can see a lot of familiar faces in the room, so that's excellent, but if anyone's new and does need any extra information, we do have those packs that have as much information as we can provide on paper. But there's also our phone number in there that we are very happy for you to call and ask any questions. What I will now explain to you is, and I know Rob said earlier, when you go up into that higher level on a home care package and needing that extra assistance there, that's a little bit more complex. And that's definitely something that we do provide as well. So that opens the door to a few more opportunities of what your higher needs might be. So we still provide all of those things that we mentioned, that I mentioned earlier, the house cleaning and the assistance in all those other areas. But there is also then funding there for you in your package to be able to access aids, mobility aids, incontinence aids, and all of the things that you need to support staying in your home for longer. Because that is our aim for our community, to be able to stay and live independently at home for as long as you can. So I'm not keeping you too long. Like I mentioned earlier, there is booklets around, there is some catalogues and brochures up the back as well. There are some specific brochures on services that we do offer, but I will be around for a little while to ask any questions at all. Please do not hesitate to come and ask. I think, without keeping you for too long, I think that's mainly what I need to cover there with you. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have an assistance with care and housing officer as well. Now that moves into the area of help with housing if you're at risk of homelessness or hoarding and squalor and things like that. If there's something that you're struggling with in that area, we do have a brochure up the back, and we do have a specific officer who helps with that as well. We are in the Gladstone area, but we have actually expanded to Rockhampton Yeppoon area as well. And we are trying to expand our services out further to like Billawheeler and places like that. So spreading the word, getting the word out there with forums and things like this is really important for us. And any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll get some information out to you. So thank you very much. And I think...
Can somebody just walk into 215 Auburn Street?
So yes, you can. Depending on our availability, obviously, we can't guarantee that there's going to be someone available then to speak to you. We do.
If that office is open all the time.
Yes. So during the week from 8:30 to 5.
people to call in that
Yeah, so
1800 appointment.
if you call that 1800 number, so it's on all of our information there, it's 1-800-468-000, and we can organise to set up a meeting with you if you'd like to come in, or we can even come to you to discuss anything that you would like to talk about. All right, so I think we're going to hear from Auntie Adele now. Yeah.
Thank you, Susanna. Here, our last special guest, last but not least, is Auntie Del Parra. She's going to come and talk to you about, as a client of aged care, and also Auntie Del's actually our board member, so our Nhulundu Health Service board member, and she's going to probably give a little bit of a history too. So I'm going to hand it over to Auntie Del. Yep, all good. Auntie Del's just going to talk. Hopefully, Auntie Del, you might want to come closer.
I'd rather come closer. Well, I'm Del Parra, and it's good to know that I've been thrown in here today. I've been with Nhulundu since back in the 1900s, but it's good to know I used to work for them. I used to go out cleaning houses, showering the people, the same thing, what they're doing for me today, and it's vice versa. It's good to know what the service is like. We have some fun. Of a Thursday, I love Thursday the best because we go travelling. We're out down to the Boyne, we're up in Mount Morgan, or all over the place. They're taking us out. And it's good, if you're home in the house, 7 days a week, and your family forgets you, that you're left there by yourself. It's good to go out and be with the other people, the aged care people, and it's good. I've got a second-hand shop out at Clyde, and it's run by us, the church, but I have the clients out there too. We have fun just sitting around, just talking, eating most of the time, but it's good fun. I'm enjoying it. Because I'm 81, I just turned 81, but I like it. I like it because it gets me out and amongst the people. And the service is good, I'll tell you that. I was laying down sick just about 3 weeks ago, and I never rang Susanna and think. I had shifted a cupboard and the whole shelf come down and hit me on the leg. And here I laying down in the bed when Sam come to clean my house. And she said, "What you doing there, Auntie Del?" And I said, "Oh, I just hurt me toe." And I'm just laying down because it's sore. I end up, they were making me go to the doctor, and I found out the toe was broken, but I was walking around all the time. But that's the kind of things the girls do help with. They're very sufficient today. When they clean your house, come and help you, and even take me shopping. I love it when we go shopping. So I just wanted to share a few things with you, what our Nhulundu Aged Care Service does for you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's probably bringing our little session to a wrap. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and also reminding you that Lenore is here in the audience, so if you'd like to call him, or will Lenore come up and have a few words? Put you on the spot, Lenore.
Do too much talking, so I do get a bit croaky. I'm really pleased that Auntie Del has mentioned one of the most important things with aged care services that Nhulundu, and that's that social interaction. It's really important, and I've been doing this job for over 11 years, and that's become a big thing that we ask people about loneliness and social interaction. So that's great, Auntie Del, that you get so much out of that.
Yeah.
I've been working in aged care for about 15 years, been in Gladstone 45, started in an aged care facility high level, and now I do the ACAT assessments. We were going into your home pre-COVID. Cassie and I, Cassie's doing the talk tonight, we're the Gladstone ACAT girls, and we cover an area the size of the Gladstone Regional Council. So when you're driving and you've got to go and see someone in your Bobo or Agnes Waters, that's one person for the whole day. Whereas now, we're doing phone assessments, we're doing the whole of Central Queensland. There are some challenges, but it's amazing how we can still do a comprehensive assessment over the phone. If for some reason you feel more comfortable having someone come to your home, if you've got hearing problems or something like that, then certainly we can arrange that. But at the moment we're doing predominantly phone assessments. And I think the department plus the other speakers have covered most of the areas that we need to sort of know about. I suppose I'll just mention some figures. I did a delegate training course just recently, and the current federal government budget for aged care is $18 billion. Billion. So as an ACAT assessor, I'm the taxpayer's gatekeeper for those funds. And of that 18 billion, 12 goes into residential care, supporting people, and the rest of the money is used in home care packages. As explained to you earlier, the home care packages are level 1 to 4. A level 1 is a fund of about 9,000 up to level 4, which is about 52,000. And that gives you anything from 1 to 2 hours a week up to 10 to 13 hours a week of care. And all of that types of care have been explained, and your little brochures that you've got there, there's really interesting information there for you. At one stage I worked as the transition care case manager that the department mentioned. Now that's a rehabilitation program. So if you have a fall, you have a stroke, you're in hospital, this is an intensive physio OT therapy that you can have in your home for about 16 weeks to get you up and going again. But we have to come in and assess you while you're actually in the hospital. So that's another great program to just be aware of if you're unfortunate enough to have a fall or a stroke, but you want to rehabilitate and go home. I don't think I've got anything much. It's been all covered very, very well. Are there any specific questions that anyone would like to ask?
Do you work through, it says the Gladstone Aged Care Assessment Team. So if I went to the Nhulundu Aged Care, and then I would have to, you would come and assess me.
If you wanted a home assessment, it would be either myself or Cassie. If you were happy to have a phone assessment, it could be any one of the Rockhampton team, because we cover the whole area from Emerald down to Yeppoon and down to Agnes Water.
Where is Nhulundu situated now? I only know them from down the old RSL building in Continuum Street.
Oh, out in Continuum Street?
They still, the aged care is still there. So our aged care offices actually moved down onto Auckland Street. So we're at 215 Auckland Street. It is listed on the back of our brochure there.
Okay.
We've actually expanded and grown so much that we've got our own building now. Yeah.
So any specific ACAT assessment questions?
I've been trying for ages to get a review.
Yeah.
My husband and myself, our circumstances changed, and I did that on about the 2nd of August, and unfortunately my husband died, and I'm having trouble being home when they ring me. But it's not your name. If there's somebody else that's not, I think it's yours.
That sounds like one of the regional assessment team. They're the basic team that come in that talk about the CHIPS funding that the Nhulundu services provide for you in that basic level where it's domestic and transport. So that would be, I'd say, would be one of the sun care girls. So they don't leave a contact number?
Yeah, I rang them back and said I'd be home definitely on Thursday at 3 o'clock
Yeah.
to make sure we connect with me. Because my doctor told me I need to have an ASAP, and I hadn't thought I was bad enough, but I said,
Yeah. Well, you can ring the 1-800 ACAT My Aged Care number and just ask them where you are in the system and
well,
see
she's
if they can
ringing
take.
me on Thursday, so I just wanted to know.
Yeah, if you say her name's Joy, that sounds like Joy from Sun Care, and she's the regional assessment service team for the home support assessment.
Can I just ask about the transition now? If you have a college replacement, is that when they transition out?
The transition care
Yeah,
program.
yeah.
Sorry, what's the question
You're
about?
on the joint replacement, so does that transition care plan?
Only if it's an acute, you have an acute situation, such as a stroke or a fracture of your hip if you had a fall and you are in hospital. It's not a program that you can access out in the community. You would look at that short-term restorative care, but there has to be a specific incident for you to access it. If you want physio or something like that, you can do a care program through your GP. Speak to your GP. There's lots of services available there. It's often just the way that you need to know how to access them. Yeah. Any other questions? I'd just like to say thank you to Nhulundu for putting this session on. It's been most informative. So it's been really good. So thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you to all our guest speakers today. Thank you everyone for coming along. Please have a look at our brochures if you need any more brochures up the back. Also, if there's any guest speakers that are still here and you wanted to answer some questions, ask some questions, please have a chat with them, or else if you want any further information, give the Nhulundu Aged Care line call on 1-800-480-00, and also the Aged Care office, as we just mentioned, is now located down at 215 Auckland Street. So thank you once again for everyone for coming, and hope you have got some valuable information out of our sessions today. Thank you.